Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the AdviserTech Show. I am Tessa, Managing Director of Money Info, and today I am delighted to be joined by Matt Jeffery, who is a Senior Manager at Alpha FMC Consulting. Hi, Matt, how are you doing?
Hey, Tessa. Yeah, very good. Thank you. How about yourself?
Very good, thank you. Welcome. Happy Friday the 13th when we're recording this. So
Yeah,
what could possibly go wrong. It's all going to be absolutely fine. So look, to get us started, tell us a little bit about your background, your role at Alpha FMC, and what kind of inspired you, your journey to kind of get to where you are today.
Oh, yeah. So I started my career in advice. So I did train as an advisor out of university about 11 years ago now. So that's where it all sort of kicked off. And I think sort of quite typically, I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do. I wanted to use my degree in some way, shape or form, which didn't necessarily manifest.
What was your degree?
I did economics.
Oh, okay, well, that's relevant, more relevant than mine, which was archaeology. So, that's good.
I don't know.
It feels like it had a purpose to get into financial services.
Yeah. Let's go with that.
Okay.
And obviously, I needed some way to pay off my overdraft, ideally. So,
Exactly.
so this seemed like the ideal thing. But as I've sort of gone through my career, taken a few sort of twists and turns. But I think the reason why I'm sort of passionate about advice and passionate about doing this stuff is because, one, the advice sort of community in the UK is great. People like yourselves, all of the vendors in the industry, all of the advice firms as well are all absolutely fantastic. And it's not a massive industry, so you get to know a lot of people.
Yeah.
We've also got quite a long way to go in terms of building the advice community that we really want to, and providing the advice to the ultimate end customer. So that's sort of really why I'm excited to be part of it. My career journey itself took a sort of weird turn in the middle, where I went from doing the advice to advising the advisors ultimately. And I don't really know how that happened. It just sort of it worked out that helping businesses to succeed became part of what I was doing within an advice firm. Sort of here we are, another sort of 6 years later. Sort of.
Fantastic. I love that. And you sort of fell into it, but not as much as some of us do. I think and I think that's changing with the younger generation. But I think a lot of people that I talk to on this podcast, we all kind of fall into financial services from weird degrees that you would think have no relevance, but they clearly give us certain skills or competencies that work with the industry. So it's good to hear that. And I started in an advice firm actually as well, but starting advising gives you a really good grounding for what you do today. And on that note, tell us a little bit about Alpha FMC. What are the services that you provide, and what type of clients or firms do you work with?
Yeah, no worries at all. So we are probably what you call a full service management consultancy. So in terms of the sort of projects and work that we get involved in, we can start from strategy with a big S on one end, and client experience work, proposition design, that sort of stuff, really ideating some of the things of the future, through to sort of outsourcing operations in the middle. So supporting businesses with cost optimization, process optimization, that sort of stuff, all the way through to some of the larger projects we've done have been on sort of quite sizable technology transformations and general change as well. So we're sort of wide in terms of our scope. We've recently just hit 1,000 consultants globally, which is really exciting.
Wow.
Really strong presence in Europe, strong presence and really quickly growing presence in North America, and similarly in APAC as well. We got such a fantastic team across the globe, but we've got a really narrow focus on the types of sort of businesses that we work with. So we kicked off in AWM sort of 25-ish years ago, I think, and built a really strong grounding on that side. And then we've done the same with wealth sort of 6 or 7 years ago, and then in the last sort of 2 or 3 years moved into the sort of classic life and pension space. And then about 18 months ago gone into the general insurance and specialty space. We've got quite a well-trodden path of establishing a good grounding with some seriously good industry professionals and consulting professionals in a particular space, and then sort of growing out from there. And that looks to continue into the future, if you like. But having the narrow focus of the businesses that we work with really allows us to sort of look at the full piece.
And that broad, I guess, that broad skill set, that broad the people that you've got across the globe allows you to kind of have expertise in all these different areas, right? And share insight, I guess, as to what's happening in the US compared to the UK or Europe, or that must be quite valuable for the clients that you work with, because we're all looking for the next, the next thing, and where should we be going? What should our roadmaps look like? What challenges are we seeing? You must be able to share some of that insight from colleagues that are working across the globe.
Yeah, definitely. And we've been working quite closely with our colleagues in the States on their sort of advice and retail advisor market is very different. Their sort of D2C propositions over there, sort of, they've really accelerated some of that stuff, and they're doing some really interesting things in the sort of direct indexing space for sort of individual clients. So yeah, there's always stuff that we can learn, and actually working with clients like some of the really blue chip asset managers who have fingers in all of the different areas that we're working in. It really then gets the team together, because we're sort of pitching into some of the really high level people at those businesses. So we are working alongside our APAC and North America colleagues. So yeah, it's really good, and we do have a really good sort of collaboration system internally to allow those ideas to pass.
And what are you seeing? So coming back to the UK, then we know that the industry is constantly evolving. We get hit by regulation. We get hit by economic factors. It never stands still, does it? It never has done in the years that I've been in financial advice, wealth management. And what are you seeing as the most significant challenges that you're seeing with firms today, and in recent years? And how are you and Alpha FMC helping firms in addressing those challenges? What is it that's keeping them awake at night right now?
I think it's most of the things that are keeping our clients awake are the things that are in the headlines generally. So consumer duty and client outcomes are massive, and there's a sort of linked concern or interest here in sort of customer experience and client experience. And I think that's going to be the great differentiator into the future. So the platforms themselves are generally commoditized, or they represent a really small part of the customer experience. The investments are a similar size, I think, in terms of the things that a customer is thinking about, and the end customer understanding what they're looking at. But actually the overarching customer experience is super important, and can create a massive differentiation across the different businesses that we're working with. Some people really hang their hat on the customer experience, which is something that we're working with a lot of businesses on. The consolidation piece, obviously, these are all going to be very obvious to the viewers or listeners, but there's a huge amount of work for us in that space, and it's not just to do with sort of business structures, but it's technology. There's cultural aspects. Investment due diligence on some businesses. Now that we've got a bit of a breather in transactional activity, since the market's been a bit lumpy recently, so people are really looking at how do we actually make the most of the opportunity we've got with the businesses that we bought. So that makes up quite a large amount of that, and that can be people. It's always an operating model aspect. Cost optimization as well tends to be part of that. Linked to that is a technology bit, and you and I have worked on things before together in the technology space. Always going to be the integration and the ease of use at the core of those things, I think. And we're working with a number of businesses on sort of the process optimization side, ensuring that where you've got quite a wide ranging estate of technology, that you're able to utilize that to its full potential. I think if you asked the 25 top advice firms what their technology issues were, rekeying would probably still be in the top 5 of those. Has been for the last 15 years. So yeah, again, people just looking to really optimize what their stack looks like and get the most out of it for their businesses. And then the final two, probably a sort of a bit newer, or at least in my mind a bit newer, are two things. So the advice gap, or trying to attack the advice gap and sort of view that as an opportunity rather than just something that's sort of talked about in the industry rags. That's really important. You've got some really interesting businesses like sort of Just FA and EV, creating potential propositions which can link into sort of other advice propositions to cater to a market which previously hasn't been catered to. And I think we'll probably start to see that that advice gap smallen, although probably not in the near, in the very near term, but in the sort of next 2 to 3 years, I'd be really interesting to watch out for changes there. And then the final thing that we're seeing and having a number of conversations on is the platform strategy of advice businesses.
Yeah.
So and this can be just what is our strategy around which retail advisor platforms to use and why. But actually, with the likes of Secol and Hubwise and some really interesting other models coming out, what P1 are doing as well is just super interesting. This space creates a whole new dimension to how the end customer actually accesses investments and ultimately accesses their money out the other side. So yeah, lots and lots of exciting things, and I'll probably.
I mean, there's a massive load of stuff to think about there, isn't there? And you've hit on, I'm sure, what a lot of our firms are they're kind of probably going tick, 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 tick. Yeah, these are the things that are keeping us awake at night a little bit. And I think I was interested in, you made a comment there that most firms now have quite a wide-ranging tech estate, right? They don't have a one system that's going to do everything for them. I don't believe in that. I don't think that one system can ever do everything well. I think people's sort of truth and operating model is around an ecosystem of technologies. And you hit the nail on the head when you said that integration is one of the biggest challenges. And we see that, and we're a tech provider and we're not perfect. We don't integrate everywhere that we should. But I don't know if you're seeing what we're seeing, which is much more of an appetite for tech firms to solve these problems, not by trying to do it all ourselves, but by integrating in the right places. And that's something we're really keen on at Money Info, because for me, the right way to deliver our roadmap is to not just decide on what we're going to do, but it's a decision around what do we build and what do we integrate with, right? And those are systems that are in the industry. We're increasingly seeing firms using more generic systems that are nothing to do with our industry, not specific. So that's quite an interesting concept for me. And then that feeds into the platform strategy as well, right? Because there's much more that we can be doing to connect platforms with advice firms and wealth managers more effectively than we have in the past. And you've mentioned some of those. I don't know whether they're disruptors or they're just a bit more forward thinking, but they're certainly starting to change the landscape in terms of how firms feel and think about their platform strategy moving forward. But I think the overarching, I don't know if you agree with this, but the overarching thing that I'm seeing out there with wealth management advice firms is they want control over their client experience. They want control over that, whether that's the platform side of things or their front-facing client experience. It is about being able to make best use of technology, but make it their own. So when their clients come in, they feel this is ABC's wealth. This is home. This is a differentiator for me, because, and that I think is where the battleground will be. It's not going to be around the underlying tech necessarily, but it's how you deliver that and how you set aside your service proposition and how you work with your clients and you do things, and your culture comes into that as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I'm going to be quite consultancy here, but one of the things we always see is people trying to let perfect get in the way of great, right? So it's picking the integration, or picking the does this deal with 85% of the problem, and therefore we can manage it on an exception basis, because that's probably a fantastic solution, and you could spend 5 to 10 years and tens of millions of pounds trying to fix that final 15%, but you can already get there to that 85% quite quickly, doing the right things with the right businesses. And talking about your own strategy with integrations, it is right. You don't want one product to do everything, because it will do everything to a less good degree. But it is about finding the right partners. It's about going in with your eyes wide open. And I think this is the thing. I think people maybe expect technology to do everything and do it perfectly all of the time, which is just never going to be the case.
It's not going to be the case. No.
It's just one of those things. But that's it. If you're going in with your eyes wide open and you realize that there are going to be some exceptions to the perfect process, but actually that you can do some pretty fantastic things with sort of technology, with minor bespoking, then that's a really good basis on which to sort of build business and build tech strategy.
That 80-20 rule, isn't it? If you can get it right 80%, if you can reduce 80% of the key rekeying, if you can get it right 80% of the the time. If 80% of your clients will use technology, but there's 20% that you might have to deal with in a slightly offline way, then that's where you want to get to, because you're never going to get, doesn't matter what we do in any aspect of life, you're never going to get 100% there, right? We've got to be realistic about what we can achieve. But if we can reduce rekeying by 80%, that's a phenomenal result, because it's going to have huge productivity gains, and therefore profitability, cost cutting comes off the back of that, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that we see quite frequently is the business doing things which they think are right, and that do cost a lot of money and take up a lot of resource. But then some of the most effective changes to technology or customer experience are often the smallest. So it's a change to a document, it's changing a document from 2 pages to 1, or it's changing the color so it's consistent with a different website, or the platform experience. It's those things, and you can even look internal as well from an advisor perspective. You'll find that a lot of advisors have sort of inertia around the technology if they don't trust it. And it could just be a very minor change which removes that inertia and actually allows that advice process to work in a much better way. So yeah, it's again refocusing from what has classically been, we're the central team and we're going to create this new thing, to how can we put this in the mind of the customer and the advisor and the advice team. I guess
it's that small changes make a big impact, isn't it? And when we implement, we always do it in manageable chunks. Small changes make a big impact. You don't have to get to your ultimate end game in day one. And actually, if you try that, you'll spend 12 months over engineering something and you'll never get out the door, right? So I think I'd agree totally with that. And we see success from that. And on that, what can you give us, without giving away any confidences, client confidentiality or anything, can you give us some examples of any success stories or projects that really stand out for you in terms of implementing that kind of stuff to make a big difference?
Yeah, definitely. Not breaking any confidences, but we worked with one of the sort of now preeminent consolidator firms in the advice industry. And we were with them for sort of 9-18 months, from pre-funding through initial strategy into the first couple of acquisitions they made, supporting them in many different areas, including their sort of technology strategy and implementation. And ultimately ended up being sort of, I think it was 6 acquisitions later, a dual running implementation of I think 3 or 4 bits of technology, and the completion of maybe a sort of 15 to 20 executive committee initiatives that they wanted to get through. And we take massive pride in that as a project, because it really exposed the varying and assorted consulting skill set that we've got through strategy, the product design, technology and implementation, and the change. We really hold that in a high regard, and the fact that it was one of the well-known advice firms as well gives us great credential in the space to then sort of go and work with some of the other larger businesses. So they're not even sort of halfway through their growth story at this point, and we see that as one of our sort of flagship projects, if you like. But you guys were involved in that as well. It was a sort of coming together of lots of really strong industry heads to create ultimately a really fantastic outcome for the client.
And you get so much insight from that, don't you? We all learn from that, because we don't know it from outset. You don't know exactly how this is going to go. You know what your success criteria are, and you've got to hit those. But there's so much that happens along the way that you kind of learn from and evolve from. And I think that's worked really well. Where for us as a tech firm, the reason we partner with firms like Alpha FMC, and it is because you bring a much broader picture. Our job is to get money info into these firms, right? And to get them from A to B, get it implemented, get it into live client rollout, get them seeing the benefits of and the value in their investment in that technology as quickly as we can. And then to keep supporting that on an ongoing basis. So I don't want any firm to say to me ever, I only use 10% of money info, I don't know what we're paying for. This is what we're all about. But when we work with companies like yourself, we get that broader picture. You're able to see us in the context of that business's overarching objectives and strategy. And that's really helpful for us, because we understand, how we fit into that, and most importantly, how we're going to drive value to help that business ultimately meet their overarching strategy as well. So I think it's a really complementary, that triangle of client and consultancy and tech firm is a really complementary solution to really help, make sure those success criteria hit.
Yeah. I think we probably see ourselves as sort of the middle people, if you like. It's sort of interpreting the needs of this side and bringing those two things together.
Yeah.
But exactly right. We're learning a huge amount from you guys and the way that you're doing it, and the right way to implement and train and business ready for money info implementation. So yeah, I think you're right. And as I said at the top of the call, it's like we're not a massive industry, so actually lots of people that we've probably worked with on a previous project together will be working on the next one, or at least have friendly faces and people that we've seen and worked with.
And how do you see, so what do you think the pace of change is right now? Because I feel there's a momentum that's building right within and we've been trying to get to this straight through processing, digital, we've been trying to really transform this industry for a number of years. And there've been a lot of roadblocks along the way. I think a lot of the roadblocks probably have been people roadblocks rather than tech roadblocks necessarily. And I think we're seeing much more now an appetite particularly across tech providers to do more together. But we've heard a lot about digital transformation over recent years. I mean, how do you see the adoption of tech impacting the firms that you're working with in advice and wealth management? What do you think the pace of change is looking like now, and how you helping firms to, I guess, leverage those technologies?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's probably a mixed bag, as you might expect. But I think, again, it's the businesses that are really sort of performing well in this space and leveraging the capabilities of the technology they've got are the ones that are recognizing that there are limitations in it almost. So it's the ones that are going, right, I know that I can do this really well with these 2 or 3 bits of technology and the way that they're integrated, and potentially they've got their own tech teams that can support you in implementation and then the sort of ongoing sort of continuous improvement. Those are the ones that are really progressing and sort of creating positive change in their business, and ultimately sort of becoming more efficient, spending more time with the clients and creating an overarching better customer outcome, and probably creating a better outcome for their staff as well. So more fulfilling roles for advice teams from advisor, paraplanners, admins, executives, etc. So those are the ones that are sort of doing really, really well. But it's naturally that there's sort of stretch, and as you say, there is a people element to this. So the tech stacks inevitably have been around since they do these firms, and there's fiefdoms of owners of certain products, and quite often we're still seeing lots of proprietary software that's been created over time or evolved out of Excel spreadsheets over sort of 15-20 years. It's really difficult to create that change, especially when you've got huge backbooks of data, customers, all that sort of stuff. Super easy if you're starting a brand new advice firm from scratch today, to do that really well. But yeah, it's probably a mixed bag. I think the way that we're trying to support our clients in doing that is from the outset setting the right level of expectation, managing those expectations throughout. As you say, in that sort of tripartite relationship, we want to act as the go-between between the business and the tech provider, because as you say, you're going to want people to use your product to its maximum potential, and then use it in whatever way they want to use it in, and actually to try and bring those two things together. And if it's 80%, then that's absolutely fantastic. So that's how we're sort of trying to build again the trust of these businesses in technology and ensure that it's really being used to its potential, because that's where you're really unlocking some of the positive changes across the advice process.
And I guess what we see with you as well is helping firms to understand how their processes can work with the technology and how they might adapt certain things. One of the things that I've never been a believer in is that we don't deliver in our tech an onboarding process and say, this is the money info onboarding process. You can do onboarding and this is how you do it. Because firms will go, well, that's not how we do it. We want to do it this way. This is our client experience. So it means that the technology becomes very configurable, and there's huge scope for firms to really make it their own. They've got control over that. But it's important that when they look at their processes, our first starting point is how, when I come to you as a client, what happens? What do I what's my experience? What do you talk to me about? What happens next? When do I have to sign things or do things? And then the job is then to say, okay, this is how we can facilitate that through the tech and actually take the paperwork out, automate some of this stuff, focus you on the conversations with the client and the peace of mind that you're giving them. And there's a real trick to that, because it isn't about re-engineering your whole operating model and your business to fit technology. It's our job to be able to say, yeah, tech can do that for you. If you want to do it this way, that's okay. But where you come is you can start to talk to firms and go, well, you are doing it this way, but actually, because we've got this piece of technology now, we could change that a little bit. And suddenly, small change, massive overhead taken away, or some costs cut out, or we've got rid of all that paperwork and we can digitize that. So it's a really interesting dynamic and process that, but what we have to ultimately both understand, I guess, is it's the firm, it's our clients' process and experience that they, they should dictate that and be in control of that. And that's where this partnership works really well, I think, because we can allow them to, not allow them, they will dictate to us how they want that process to work, and it's our job to make it work, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, some of the, I think,
because that's their differentiator, right?
well,
It's
yeah,
not,
this is it.
That's what's really setting them apart, is how they deal with their clients.
Yeah, it's exactly right. But to your point, we've done this with 2 or 3 clients now, where we've done a proper sort of time in motion study of how each of their processes runs, and we can do that across regions, and we can do that sort of throughout their different offices and part of their different propositions as well. And it's been really interesting to see the reactions of those businesses to go, I thought that bit, it took 20 minutes, but actually it's taking elapsed time of 3 days or something like that, and actually bringing that stuff to light.
Yeah.
And it's sort of presenting a money info solution, and you're going, well, actually, rather than this taking 3 hours to rekey the fact find back into the system, you're doing it here and it's live and the client's taking it. It costs your business no time to do that. Those are the conversations that are really, really interesting, where you're sort of, it's something that wasn't necessarily obvious to the business before, but you're showing them the A/B test almost to, this is how you could change things for the positive.
Tangible results, isn't it? Because ultimately it comes down to return on investment, right? If you're going to invest in technology, you want to see that that's going to achieve a return on that investment, and you're going to see cost savings, profitability, productivity increases, better client engagement, whatever it happens to be. So that's really interesting. We need to share some of that insight soon, because I mean, we're doing some of that together anyway, aren't we? But I think that's what firms want to see, isn't it? The real tangible outcomes that they're going to achieve from technology. And we're heading towards the end of our session, Dave, but what do you think, what's the next big challenge that you're seeing for firms on the horizon now? There's a lot of talk about AI, but my view is a lot of firms are they haven't got the building blocks in place to do. There are some use cases for it. I don't think the industry has really articulated those well yet. But what do you think is the next big challenge for firms once they've got, the basics right? What's on the horizon?
Yeah, it's a good question. And AI obviously is part of sort of every conversation that we're having at the minute.
Yeah.
To your point, it was the same with, portal technology. It was the same with anything, unless you've got the back office really nailed and the data is correct, you're going to struggle. As you say, there are some use cases that we're seeing coming through. So sort of policy plan, account analysis, those sorts of things, or sort of a few chat bots that we're seeing coming through, generative AI. So yeah, it's really exciting space, but it's an inertia element. And I think certainly with the sort of bots where it's a two-way conversation. I know that my bank has always provided me a pretty poor experience when it's come to looking at my account status on the sort of chatbot thing. So again, there's just going to be a natural inertia to sort of trusting that bit of technology. But as you say, within the businesses, the background needs to be, really the foundation needs to be really stable ultimately.
Yeah.
So that's, it's a really interesting one. We're having some good conversations on it, and I think there are some businesses in this space that are already doing some fantastic stuff on that. So we are quite close with Aveni.
I've had a couple of firms talk to about them recently, so I think there's certainly somebody we'll be talking to, because they're doing some good stuff in that space, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it's their sort of current use cases, they've got many, but purely from a risk perspective, they've got a fantastic compliance product, but being able to record, transcribe, and analyze, and then create suitability reports out of a phone call just like this, it's pretty, it's really, really amazing, and hopefully bringing some of that through in the next few years to see pretty changed landscape with regards to provision of advice.
But I guess they have to go through that adoption curve that we've gone through, and we're kind of the other side of it now in getting advisors and wealth managers to trust that, right? And there's always got to be a human element to it. There's always got to be an eyeballing of this. It helps shortcut, but doesn't replace the brilliant work that advisors and paraplanners and wealth managers and investment managers are doing. But it does help to make that process quicker and easier for them to conduct, right? It gives them a straw man that they can then go, okay, I'm happy with this, but actually I want to change this language a little bit. I want to make it how my clients know me, and how I how know the firm, and how they deliver that to the client.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a movement generally from a purely manual or a largely manual set of processes to managing the issues or nuances on an exception basis, and that's sort of what we should be doing throughout the industry. Do you know what I mean? That's where everything should be going.
Yeah,
and it's the inertia, it's the trust element which really is, I think, together.
And it's the understanding that none of these technologies are going to replace the human advisor, right? Because all of us want that connection, that human connection in an advice or a wealth process, because we're making big decisions about things that affect our future, and all of us want to look someone in the eyes and for them to say, this is the decision we need to be making, this is how we're going to hit that goal, and we've gone through the right due diligence process to get you as close as you can to, and we'll review it on an ongoing basis. It's what we want. I always say when people are engaging with financial advice firms, they're paying for peace of mind. They're not paying for an investment strategy. They're not paying for a document that tells them their goals, albeit this is all valuable stuff. Ultimately, we're paying for peace of mind. And that's what a computer can't give, right?
No, exactly right. Exactly right. So yeah, AI, very exciting. I think that there is a really interesting sort of dynamic emerging right now, where the sort of PE investment cycle of a lot of the large consolidators is sort of coming to an end. So we're getting to the end of that 3 or 5 year cycle. I don't know which way necessarily it will go, but there's potentially quite a different direction that the structure of the market could go in the next sort of 2 to 3 years. And also with the sort of lumpy market recently, maybe rethinking some of their strategy and having to sort of reallocate some of their investment. So yeah, it's that side of it's very interesting. And obviously with the amount of investment that we've already got, the continued consolidation, and the fact that there's a lot of firms that have made a number of acquisitions, not just of advice firms, but maybe a DFM, maybe a platform, maybe some other provision as well. And actually, how do you maximize having all of those things under one roof? And very few businesses have really nailed that sort of vertical integration piece, both creating a better financial situation for the business and ultimately better customer outcomes. So I think there's probably a number of firms are going to be looking at over the next 18 months as we need to not just consolidate, but sort of consolidate ourselves, if you like, and make sure we're getting the value from the investment that we've made. So yeah, those two probably very big exciting things. I think longer term, and this is views of my own on this one, but I don't see the reason why there wouldn't be a continued convergence of sort of retail financial services. So a bit like a sort of private bank for the masses, like a sort of holistic private bank for the masses. We had that divergence of financial services sort of 15 or so years ago. We've had a convergence within our space at least, but could you envisage potentially sort of more classic retail banking products being offered alongside some of the products that we're offering within the advice world? I don't know. It's a sort of interesting space, and everybody seems to be waiting on a Google or an Apple to get involved in this space, and then everyone thinks it's going to be game over. But that could come from within as well, and bringing those things together, you're creating really sticky clients, and potentially some fantastic long-term relationships with those clients. So yeah, potential. That's maybe a a hypothesis which may never come true.
Well, we'll replay this in 5 years' time and see that, right? And I guess from Alpha's perspective, in terms of what's on the horizon for you, it's looking forward and seeing those things, and then looking at how your services can help your clients navigate that environment to move them into the future.
Yeah, this is it. I think all of the things we've spoken about as sort of current issues that our clients are dealing with, and then anything we can envisage happening into the future, we've got to be prepped for, because we need to be the voice for our clients.
Yeah.
We have to be the sort of critical friends to say, look, we don't think that's going to happen. We have the data from all of these amazing businesses that we work with, and we can't see that happening in the next few years. Or actually, no, that's something that you really should be concerned about and should be sort of putting some investment into. So yeah, it's something that we always sort of need to keep our finger on the button of. I think what are we seeing at the minute? It's all of those things that we've spoken about, but we're sort of continuing to work in the strategy space for some of those consolidators and the larger vertically integrated businesses to really support how they create that ultimate value. We've got a lot on in terms of that process engineering piece as well, which is really exciting, and that's not just in the advice space, but also sort of platform wide as well, and into insurance, because businesses are going, look, we need to really squeeze the value out of everything that we're doing, and we need to utilize technology, but we need to be doing the most efficient processes that we possibly can to ensure the sort of longevity of the business. So
in the context of in a lot of firms, it's in the context of their overall target operating model, right? It's not just the tech, it's the people, it's the process, it's everything that they need to bring together to set themselves up for a successful future.
Yeah, and one of the things that's sort of emerging for us is a sort of HR and people practice, and it's something that we're seeing more of, where the cultural side of businesses it's not been ignored, but it's always been secondary to something else like the financial technology. But actually really aligning the culture and the people side and any sort of policies and that sort of stuff to the goals of the business really creates a sort of mass motivation to move all in the right direction.
And it's so important for buy-in, right? You have to bring everybody along with you in terms of where you're going and why you're doing things, and to get them to adopt technology. The cultural piece is so important. It's so important to us, and not just from how we work with our clients, but also how we perform as a business. We have a set of business objectives across our people, our process, our new clients, our existing clients, and all of our team are engaged in that, and they help us drive that and understand it and shape it, and I think the same with any transformational project is that the people and culture aspect of it can't be underestimated. We see it's a huge cultural shift when you put client-facing technology out. You got to, there's a confidence thing. I don't think you can ever underestimate it. And I think people and culture are so important to any transformational project, because otherwise, you're not going to succeed. And that's, sometimes it is a little bit overlooked. It's all about the process and the tech and the, what button presses happen and, what tasks are going to get done. And actually, there's a whole ethos that needs to sit behind it, right?
Yeah, absolutely right.
Brilliant. Well, look, we're kind of coming up to the end of the time today. So before we finish, just tell people, if they want to know more, where can they go? What you're on this, you're on the socials, contact details. Just give us a heads up. Give us a shout out for getting in touch. All the people that are going to want to get in touch with FMC when they've watched this podcast, because the brilliant stuff we've talked about.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, going to our website to find out more is obviously sort of first port of call, but I'm very happy to chuck my email address in the link. And we're always on the lookout for fantastic people in this space as well. So if anybody is interested in joining us, then please do get in touch.
Fantastic. Well, look, Matt, it's been brilliant to talk to you on this Friday the 13th afternoon. Nothing's fallen over, nothing's collapsed. We're all okay. It's all gone well. So look, thanks so much for joining us on the AdviserTech Show today. Really appreciate it. It's been really insightful and interesting, and I'm sure our audience will be thinking exactly the same as well. So thank you very much, and have a great weekend.
Thanks so much. Absolute pleasure.
Brilliant. Thanks, everybody. Subscribe, share it with your friends, and look out for more episodes of the AdviserTech Show soon as well. Thanks very much.